Okay. Let's have attention, please. By Professor Florence Langer, who is the professor of soil physics at the University of Jomo Kenyatta of Agriculture and Technology in Nairobi, Kenya. Professor Florence is also a member of the task force that drafted the user's guide. Among other members, which you know later. Professor Langer has over 30 years of experience in university teaching. So he's got a lot of experience to show. He's with us this afternoon. She is set for
Florence was the core of HAQAA2. And in this context, a task force has been established to take the ASGQA forward under HAQAA2. As we all know that the ASGQA was developed under HAQAA1, and it was important to take forward the work that has been done during HAQAA1 into HAQAA2. And one of the main functions of the task force, which at the end of this presentation, we are going to announce the members of the task force. And I can assure you, the members are representative of our Africa, or the linguistic regions are represented in the task force that drafted the user's guide. And one of the main functions, among others, of this task force was to develop the user's guide and toolkit for implementation of the ASGQA in quality assurance agencies and universities. Upon debating the appropriateness of such a tool, which would respect the diversity of ways in which the ASGQA can be applied. So this is the work of the task force. And it is also important that this tool, which we are announcing today, includes additional guidance on each of the standards of the ASGQA, including case examples of how the standards can be implemented in various national and educational contexts. Furthermore, it is important to highlight that this user's guide will clarify how the ASG relate to existing national and regional standards that are already established across Africa. It is hoped that this guide will provide a practical support to higher education institutions, quality assurance agencies, and national authorities in developing their quality assurance frameworks in line with continental standards. Without going further, I would like to invite Professor Florence Lenga to take us through the development process, and she has got 15 minutes to do so. Thank you, Madam. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Mukora, the chair of the session. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And I will just go straight because my preamble was more or less what Jeff has already introduced. So I'll go straight away to the development process. Okay, I hope the slides are quite heavy, but I hope you'll be able to follow. And of course, the SGQA was the main reference document for the development process of the user's guide. And of course, there were also contributions from insights from the consultation visits and the reviews that were made following the HAQAA2, and of course, tested for the fitness of purpose of the review methodology used in the pilot agencies. And out of those findings then, we were able to create some feedback, and through virtual focus groups, of course, we were able then to move on. These were conducted in April and June 2020 from the agencies and ministries that participated initially in the consultancy visits. And of course, the key findings from the impact assessment reports were discussed by the task force, and they actually informed the contextualization of the user's guide where it was actually applicable. The task force was formed sometime in, I think it must have been in March 2020, when the COVID-19 pandemic was still on. And therefore, this task force was unable to have a physical meeting at any one time. So what happened? All the meetings were virtual as a group. And later on, when we discussed and agreed on the format of how the user's guide ought to be, we divided ourselves into two groups, noting that the ASGQA was actually in three parts. Part A being the internal quality assurance for the higher education institutions, and of course, Part B being the actual external quality assurance by the EQAS, and Part C was for the internal quality assurance of the actual external quality agencies. And of course, because of that, then it was in 2020. Yeah, in 2021, we started in 2020, but in 2021 is when we divided ourselves into two groups, as I had alluded to. And one group did the user's guide for Part A, that is the internal quality assurance for the higher education institutions. And the second group then worked on Part B and C as they relate to the external quality assurance. Part A of the ASGQA has actually got 13 standards. Sorry. I thought I was loud enough. Sorry about that. Part A has 13 standards, and each of those standards has guidelines within the ASGQA. Part B has 7 standards, which again have specific guidelines to each of those standards, while Part C has 9 standards with also guidelines. So once the team agreed on the format, then the initial draft sections were discussed by the various groups, circulated amongst the groups, members of that particular group, agreed upon, and then shared within the membership of the whole task force. And of course, critical discussions were made, reflections were made, in a series of meetings and the inputs, and of course, strengthening of the user guide actually took place. On completion of the work by the task force, the draft users guide was shared with what we now know as the HAQAA ambassadors in quality assurance in higher education for further input regarding the appropriateness of the general structure. And these offered quite good examples and evidences and overall feedback, which again were placed into the user's guide to actually strengthen it further. And of course, after incorporating the inputs from the ambassadors, the final draft user's guide was submitted to the African Union Commission for consideration and endorsement before proceeding for publication. As when the publication will be out, I think we'll be able to be told later on by some of our members. The structure of the user's guide followed more or less the same way as the SGQA. We thought that for us to be able to use the ASGQA as the reference document, there was a need to have the standards and the guidelines in the first column, followed by two other columns. And we agreed that in the two other columns, after the standard and the guidelines for a given particular section, then we would have what we called focus points or guiding questions as to what was required in order to implement the standards. And then, of course, the third column actually did provide examples of evidences that one would look for in the implementation of the standards and the guidelines. And of course, with those examples, we thought they would be good, practical examples, of course, which are actually internationally accepted when we are carrying out reviews, when we are carrying out accreditation, when we are carrying out audits and the like. So section 1 comprises of the standards and guidelines for internal quality assurance, which is the part A of the ASGQA. And section 2 is in two parts. The first part is on the standards and guidelines for external quality agencies' initial quality assurance. And of course, part 2 of the section 2 is on actually the part C of the ASG. And as I said already, actually the guide is in tabular format for ease of references from the various standards and the guidelines. I think I'll go straight away to some of the examples. And here I've just picked a few of the standards to be able to show. Are we okay with us? Yes. Sorry about that. So we have picked some examples from section 1, which is the part A of the ASGQA. And I just selected randomly some of the standards and of course the guidelines attached to that standard, and not all the guidelines because there are many for some of the standards. And of course I just picked in order so that we could be able to illustrate this. And I know when I was preparing this and we agreed, at least I got information, Elizabeth has not yet arrived, that you would be able to download the user guide. And I hope you have been able to download and you can be able to follow. So now we have the standard 2, which is governance and management. And the standard itself, as given in that ASGQA, reads as follows. The institution shall have clearly stated governance and management structures. This will ensure sound and ethical governance and management, including robust QA practices that support the achievement of its mission and legal mandate. So the focus points or guiding questions that we actually put down were, what do your governance and management structures look like? Are they aligned with national and regulatory standards? And then we went ahead and said, okay, let's try to see examples of good practice, or what we refer to as possible evidences that could actually be attached to the focal points and to the standard and the guidelines that go with it. So we say then you would have to refer to the organizational chart of your institution, refer to the statutes of the institution. And of course, the other focus points were, do the relevant bodies have clearly defined mandates, functions, and responsibilities? If so, then describe the functions and responsibilities of the relevant bodies. And then to what extent are students involved in these bodies? And then we ask, can you provide information on the qualifications and experience of your institution's management, and also provide information of the age and gender, and how inclusive and internationalization are taken into account in the recruitment process. And of course, these focus points or guiding questions are not exhaustive. They're just examples as to how you can be able to think through on how to be able to implement the standards and the guidelines that have been given. So possible examples of good practice would then be the documented and communicated authorities and responsibilities, such as job descriptions, employment contracts, etc. Job profile for the top management position, selection process for the top management positions, and the like. So it continues on, and I will not endeavor to read all this because there are many, and I just picked quite a number. The next one was the design, approval, monitoring, and evaluation of study programs. And this standard has got two statements. And of course, the statements are heavy. And here we include even ODEL programs. And the statements are given there. And of course, I'll read them through so that we can be able to follow. And then I'll just give the focus points of a few and also the examples of good practices. The institution shall have policies and systems that ensure the design and development, monitoring and evaluation of quality, relevant study programs that are learning outcome based and aligned with the needs of the stakeholders, and that contribute to the achievement of its mission and are commensurate with the national, regional, and international standards. And in case of the ODEL, the provider shall have in place mechanisms for pre-testing or piloting the learning materials to ensure that they are at the learner's level and that the learners will be able to use them without difficulty. So the focus points were, and these are just a few, there are many that we have put in the user's guide. Does the institution have clear standards for curriculum, module, or course design and development? Who initiates the introduction of new programs? What procedures are in place, and are they clearly documented and followed? Who is involved in the design, approval, and implementation of the quality assurance procedures, and what does this entail? Why and when does the institution decide to launch a new program? And of course, I'll just go straight now to the examples of the good practice or evidences that one would want to refer to. So there would be policies and procedures on introducing, developing, revising, and terminating study programs. There would be also admission and graduation policies and procedures. And of course, policies and procedures on the transfer of students and recognition of courses. And of course, ongoing improvement of learning and teaching methods, integrated relationships between teaching staff and the staff working at the library with databases, and then the role of councils and their responsibilities for implementing and following up teaching and learning policies. I will now move on to examples for section 2. That is part B of the SQQA. And here we have the standard 1 for objectives of external quality assurance and consideration for internal quality assurance. And the standard is External quality assurance shall ensure that the higher education institution has clearly articulated vision and mission statements, and it shall help the institution ensure the effectiveness of its internal quality assurance mechanisms, providing an additional instrument for assessing institutional quality. So some of the focus points were, how does the agency ensure that the higher education institution has a clearly defined, articulated, and publicly available vision, mission, and objectives? And the evidence would be to indicate the criteria the agency succeeds in ensuring that the higher education institution develops or has a vision, mission, and objectives. And of course, analysis of the frames of reference and documents taken into account in the external evaluation process. Again, I'll just pick two other questions for guiding purposes. And one of them is, how does the agency take into account the quality policy and procedures developed by the evaluated institution? And one of the evidences would be, explain the place of HAQAA in the agency's criteria and standards. And secondly, the higher education institution undergoing external evaluation describes and analyzes its quality assurance mechanisms to ensure the quality of its activities. And these mechanisms are aligned with the vision, mission of the institution. And then I will move on now to actually, I want to move on to my chair here is already giving me notice. I want to move on to part 2 of section 2. That is the part C of the ASGQA. And I use standard 4, the independence of quality assurance agencies. And the standard is, the QAA shall be independent and autonomous in its operations, outcomes, judgment, and decisions. So the focal points to consider is comment on the independence of your agency in terms of the aspects described in the guidelines: organizational independence, operational independence, independence of formal outcomes. Then consider in greater detail how operational and organizational independence is safeguarded in practice. How does the agency operate independently, de facto, especially in terms of defining procedures and methods, as well as nomination of and appointment of experts? How does the agency ensure that the outcomes of its quality assurance processes are independently its responsibility? And I think we had the last session just before lunch was discussing around these actually aspects. And examples of good practice then would be policy documents on independence, procedures for nomination of staff, procedures for the development and validation of quality assurance standards, procedures for the approval of expert proposals, appeals, and complaints. And then I don't know whether to continue or I stop there, because I have one more that I could share, but I think I'll just move on and then talk about the target group, scope, and applicability of the user's guide. Of course, the target group of the user's guide are actually the quality assurance practitioners of the higher education institutions, the quality assurance agencies, as well as any other organizations or experts that conduct external reviews of quality assurance agencies. And of course, we do note that the user's guide does not replace or burden the guidelines and the standards that are there, but it's actually a complementary document for purposes of implementing the already existing document that has actually been established, developed, and published, so that then it supports and enhances the implementation of already existing regional, national, and institutional regulatory standards. And as I said earlier on, the examples given therein are illustrative, prescriptive and non-exhaustive. And therefore, we note that the user's guide complements actually the implementation of the ASG QA. And these tools, we hope, will help us in the pursuit of a common African higher education space based on the generic principles of quality assurance and quality enhancement. We do acknowledge herein the efforts of the task force members. And I want to say that we have at least two members, no, more than two members. We have Professor Alal, that everybody saw. He was chairing a session. He's seated at the back from Algeria. We have Professor Abdul Sise, yes, from Senegal. They are sitting together there because they know they'll answer the questions after this. And then we have Madam Elizabeth Colucci from Global Observatory in Spain. And then we had Kati. You were able to hear her. I think today in the morning, she participated in one of the sessions from Belgium. And then we have Anna Gova from HAQAA, Belgium. And of course, my chair here, Dr. Mukora, who was our chairman of the task force. And of course, we have Opio Okwiri, also from Global Observatory, Spain. And then we have also Noel Saliu, National University Commission, Nigeria. We have Professor Juma Shaban, who is from Malawi, but under assessor quality subs cluster. Then we have from Malawi. And then we have Annalie Williamson from Namibia University of Science and Technology, Namibia. And of course, I don't need to be introduced. I'm right here and you have seen me and my name. The coordinating organizations were AAU, Association of African Universities, Obrel Global, ENCA, DAD. And the project sponsors and overseers were the African Union Commission and the European Union Commission. We thank the task force members for their teamwork and commitment into introducing the tool within the stipulated framework, especially under the working conditions that were pretty difficult. You know how virtual meetings are. Today, we cannot communicate, we postpone, and we continue on and on. But in the end, we were able to produce what we have been able to present. The members are also grateful to the appointing authorities for the opportunity that we were granted to serve in the task force. It was a very enriching experience. Finally, our gratitude goes to the coordinating team and the sponsors who enabled the process to be smooth and successful. Thank you for listening.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Florence, for such an insightful presentation of the user's guide. We have heard that this user's guide is not here to replace the ASGQA, but it is here to complement so that quality assurance agencies and our universities can implement the ASGQA successfully. So thank you so much for agreeing to represent the task force in this presentation. I'm going to take some few questions. Our time is limited. So you can show by raising up your hands. I've got Violet here. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 3 questions. I think that will be okay. We can start with Violet. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff. Congratulations for the job done. And I think this time, surely it was clear people wanted more guidance in terms of how they were going to use the standards. I'm just coming in to say now that the user's guide is there and the standards and guidelines are there, is it not possible to put them together to make one document in order to avoid something like, I think from the presentation, you would see that in the user's guide, you still need to repeat the standards before you ask the questions and also before you add the comments So maybe the possibility of just having one document such that when a person opens a standard, already they can read the questions which are guiding. They can even also now getting the comments and they go to the next standard, unlike using two separate sources. I thank you.
For such a question, a good one. Next, yes, somebody with a blue suit to come first.
Je suis le professeur HAQAA2 de Côte d'Ivoire, de l'Institut national polytechnique. Moi, c'est un plaidoyer, c'est pas... J'ai toujours demandé, que ce soit au CAMES, à tous les référentiels, que dans la mise en place des référentiels pour faciliter l'implémentation, que ces référentiels aussi aient une macro qui permet de pouvoir comprendre effectivement la mise en œuvre des exigences du référentiel. Et la deuxième chose, c'est aussi au niveau des référentiels de permettre que ces référentiels-là aient des annexes qui comparent un peu les référentiels existants qui sont déjà dans les institutions et voir comment intégrer tout ça dans un ensemble cohérent. Et la troisième chose, c'est autant on met en place des référentiels, il serait intéressant qu'on puisse mettre en place aussi des référentiels pour la qualification des auditeurs, donc des experts évaluateurs, pour que tout le monde ait, parce que j'ai l'impression que au niveau de l'enseignement supérieur, le fait d'être professeur titulaire te donne droit à pouvoir évaluer les formations. Je pense que c'est deux métiers différents, avec des exigences différentes. Donc, il faudrait qu'on arrête de pouvoir immédiatement mettre des... Bon, je sais pas, je n'ai rien contre le professeur titulaire, moi-même je suis professeur titulaire, mais je pense que ce sont des métiers qui exigent une certaine rigueur, une certaine manière de faire, qui n'est pas forcément l'enseignement supérieur. Donc, c'est un métier, et dans ce cas, il faudrait se former et pouvoir qualifier cette formation et leur permettre de pouvoir évaluer et de pouvoir aussi se prévaloir d'être des experts évaluateurs.
Okay. The next question, the third one. Hello, can you hear me? You can go ahead with the question. Yes.
Sir Kambaja, Emmanuel de la RDC. Ma question est la suivante. Vous pensez que le guide de l'utilisateur peut être disponible quand exactement? Parce que là, on n'arrive pas à les télécharger. Est-ce qu'il est là sur les sites? Parce que moi, je ne le vois pas. On l'annonce sur les sites.
Okay, this time I'm going to speak in English. My friend is next to me. I could have just told him my remark, but I would like to share it with the other people. The evaluation and the assessment is made by colleagues, university teachers and higher education teachers. So asking experts to be non-higher education teachers, I don't agree with this one. Why? Because a higher education teacher knows the programs and knows what is being taught, and what he lacks is a training on the way he should do the assessment and the evaluation. And bringing people who are not from the higher education field and training them to do the assessment and evaluation. Personally, I don't think it's a good. It's not. But the way we do, you have a committee of experts of 3. You can have one of them who is trained in quality assurance and experts in evaluation, and the other two ones in the subjects that are being assessed or evaluated. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, I will invite Florence to respond to some of the questions first, and then I'll give the opportunity to some of the members of the task force who are in this room to also respond. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. And I'm glad I can see members of the task force who are not here online. And I'm glad Kathy is listening. And I want to believe Anneli is someplace because she promised that she would be listening. And even as we respond to some of these questions and comments that have been given, my colleagues in the task force will be able to also chip in. I want to start with Violet's comment. And that is one of the things that we struggled on, the type of structure that user's guide ought to have. And we devolved on this in many meetings and discussions. And the consensus in the end was that, just as Violet has said, we should really have one document where we have the ASGs, QS, the standards and the guidelines, and then a user's guide. And then in the end, we decided, no, it will be just one document. So we have the first column, the standard as a statement, and of course, its guidelines. And then with that, along that, we have the focus points or guiding questions, followed by another column of the evidence. So if you are able to open the document and you go to the second standard that I used for section 1 for the part A, you'll find that there are 3 columns. And you have the first column with the standards, the guidelines, second column with the guiding questions, and the third column. So you are reading everything direct on the same page. That is for sure. And then the other comment was about evaluation experts, whether they should be coming outside the higher education sector. Did I get that right? Or should they be the same ones to actually be the experts to evaluate? The answer to this was that it wasn't that. What was it? I think it was. I would give, and my colleagues can chip in, is yes and no. Because when people are doing the assessment, you need both the professionals in that area and also others that can check that are not professionals in that area. And even the professionals in that area, they always must be trained on how to do it. You cannot walk out of the classroom as a professor and say that you are an expert in the assessment procedure of the given program. Otherwise, they are always inducted before they go for the reviews, before they go for the assessments. And I think the external quality assurance agencies actually have tools for training, and actually they collaborate with each other in ensuring that the training is done. And so we are talking from the same page. And so when you go for the assessment, you are all on the same page and you actually work as a team. Other people may be able to chip in, and especially those that have conducted the reviews, the experts, as we heard this morning. Thank you. Maybe my colleagues could also chip in. Thank you.
Florence, for that response. Can I give a chance to Abdul and Professor Klaus there, if you have got any comments? And Kathy is also online. So we will start with the people who are here physically, and then we'll go to Kathy to give an input. Thank you. Abdul, it's your turn.
Merci beaucoup, Jeffy. Merci beaucoup, Florence. Je pense que vous avez relaté exactement ce qui s'est passé dans le groupe.
Et les questions qui ont été posées aussi, c'était des questions qu'on a eu à aborder dans le groupe. Mais la difficulté de ce travail, c'est d'arriver à un guide, c'est-à-dire quelque chose qui aide, qui oriente. Mais si on ne fait pas attention aussi, on va arriver à un document presque prescriptif. Parce que s'il y a beaucoup d'exemples, beaucoup de documents à pointer, dans la mise en œuvre, les gens ont tendance à faire un checking, ce qui n'est pas recherché pour garantir l'aspect réflexif de cet instrument. Finalement, nous avons opté à un guide, comme l'a dit Florence, avec un tableau qui rend compte des standards et des lignes directrices, en mettant des questions plus ou moins d'orientation générale et en pointant le minimum d'éléments qui peut aider aux structures de concevoir leur propre référentiel, leur propre dispositif d'assurance qualité en se fondant sur les bonnes pratiques, sur l'essentiel que nous partageons au niveau africain. Ça, c'était la première difficulté. La deuxième difficulté, c'est les experts. Ça aussi, on est parti de l'expérience. Et certains même mettent des étudiants. Les professionnels sont dans les équipes. Ça répond à la politique nationale d'enseignement supérieur. La professionnalisation, l'adéquation des formations par rapport au marché. Autant nous les voyons dans les organes de gouvernance, dans les conseils d'administration, ils sont représentés dans les curriculums, dans les programmes, dans l'intervention des vacataires, des professionnels, autant nous devons aussi les retrouver dans les dispositifs d'évaluation. C'est ce qui a justifié aussi l'implication des professionnels dans les équipes à côté, effectivement, académiques venant du programme ou d'institutions similaires. Voilà les précisions que je voulais apporter. Merci.
Merci.
Can you please be brief?
Yes, very brief. Oui, briefly. Merci, Jeffy. Merci, professeur Pananga. Moi, je voudrais revenir juste sur cette histoire des experts. En fait, dans un système, dans un organisme, vous avez un certain nombre de processus. Et parmi ces processus, qui peuvent être regroupés en 3 familles, processus pilotage, les processus support et les processus métiers, eh bien, les processus métiers exigent qu'ils soient évalués par des gens du métier. Et donc, ça nous indique forcément qu'il faudrait qu'il y ait des enseignants, je ne parle pas du grade de professeur, mais qu'il y ait un minimum d'expérience pour pouvoir évaluer tout ce qui concerne l'enseignement, la recherche et toutes les activités des processus métiers. Ils peuvent être accompagnés, bien sûr, d'autres experts qui sont plus généralistes, mais il y a nécessité d'avoir des experts de l'enseignement supérieur. Merci.
Un éclaircissement. Hein. J'ai l'impression que ce que j'ai dit a été mal compris. Je dis que je n'ai rien contre le fait que les professeurs évaluent leur métier. Mais je dis l'évaluation, c'est tout un autre concept. Donc, ce qui fait que tu peux être professeur titulaire, mais un mauvais évaluateur. C'est pour cela que je demande qu'il y ait une procédure de qualification des experts évaluateurs qui leur reconnaît le grade d'évaluateur. Peut-être que pour déposer le dossier, il faudrait qu'il soit professeur du rang A ou rang B, je ne sais pas. Mais au moins, pour cette activité qui génère des données qu'on va analyser pour pouvoir s'améliorer, il faudrait que ça ne souffre d'aucune contestation. Donc, pour cela, il faudrait qu'il y ait une procédure qui soit validée et de telle sorte que ces experts-là aussi, chaque 2 ans,
Noted that. Before Professor Florence is going to answer that, I just wanted to invite Katie. Katie, are you still online? Yes, Katie.
Do you hear me, Jeffy?
Please go ahead.
Do you hear me? Yes? Okay. Thank you, Jeffy, for giving me the floor. Considering the place of experts and the possibility to certify them, of course, that could be done, but I think that reasonably in practice, ASG are a form of continental guidance, but of course, each agency develops its own sets of standards that corresponds to the context of the country or the region. And so experts need to be trained in any case, in any circumstances, because they need to be trained to the context. They need to be trained to the specific tools of each agency they work for. So this is the richness and this is the flexibility of the global tool, to be adaptable, to be used in several contexts. So I don't really see the point in certifying experts against ASG or against such or such sets of standards. And considering the experience of the variety of expertise, I think that's the richness that we need in the panels. We need to have the expertise of a student, not because he is a specialist in making up courses, but because he is a specialist of experiencing how it is to be a student. And that's the part of his expertise that we like. We can also have someone from the workplace, because someone from the workplace will know better the needs of the working place. And of course, it is a different expertise than that from a teacher. And it's the richness of those different kinds of expertise that is important. Otherwise, we wouldn't spend money and time to have a panel. We would do it with one or two persons. So I think that's the added value, to have those cross views and the fact that it's the panel that compose a bunch of expertise that is useful for the assessment. So that's my view on it. And just to answer the question of someone from RC, les guides sont disponibles sur le site. Je les ai téléchargés hier en français, en anglais, en portugais, et Arabic is coming.
No, I don't have to share answer.
I think Katie has already answered the thing Florence was supposed to address. I don't know whether there is still some insisting questions around, maybe just one to close the session. Professor Ngara, Emmanuel.
Thank you, Chair. One problem that we have encountered with institutions developing programs is not understanding the difference between policies and procedures. And I am wondering whether that is covered so that, can understand fully what is a policy and what is a procedure. Thank you.
Hello, you want to answer it? So before I can answer the question, I'm asking whether we've got any members of the technical working group who is prepared to chip in, please, online at the question, if you understand the question, they're asking whether there's a difference between policy and procedures. Was it made clear in the user's guide? Because in practice, there are difficulties in distinguishing those two terms, policy and procedures. Okay, Professor.
Thank you for some of these questions. We have actually a section, an introductory section, defining some of these very concepts, so that as we use the user guide, we are together. So some of these things are already there in the definitions and how we actually apply those definitions within the user guide and even the African standards and guidelines. So such we have in the actual user's guide. And of course, there are some more in the African standards and guidelines, definitions and concepts. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You want to, yeah, I will, Professor Angara was the last one, but because of you, I will allow you to pose your question.
Thank you. As you allow me again to speak in French, because this will be, I think that the translators are online. C'est pour dire que yes, it's working. Can you hear me? Yes. Alors, c'est pour dire qu'en réalité, depuis plusieurs années, il y a le CAMES, qui a les référentiels CAMES, qui a été soutenu par l'UNESCO, et ces référentiels portent sur les référentiels des offres de formation, les référentiels des programmes de recherche, les référentiels sur les systèmes d'information, les référentiels sur l'évaluation institutionnelle et les référentiels sur les formations ouvertes à distance. Naturellement, je pense que dans l'espace CAMES qui rassemble 19 États membres, et l'UNESCO a appuyé cette dynamique-là, et nous avons renforcé les capacités des experts, des universitaires, des directeurs d'institutions universitaires, présidents d'universités, recteurs, etc. Donc, je pense qu'on ne peut pas faire abstraction de ça. On a bel et bien les ASG, mais nous avons que ceci est en cours dans l'espace francophone. Ça, c'était le premier point. Deuxième point, je voudrais attirer l'attention sur le fait que aujourd'hui, nous sommes en train de travailler. Il est vraiment important de mettre l'accent sur, il y a quelqu'un qui l'a dit la fois dernière, parce qu'on n'était pas ici, et sur l'assurance des qualités des formations en ligne. Avec la COVID, les universités n'étaient pas préparées à l'enseignement ouvert et les universités virtuelles. Donc, on s'est lancé et naturellement, on aura certainement des répercussions. Mais nous, au niveau de HAQAA2, peut-être HAQAA3, HAQAA4, il nous faut effectivement prendre en compte l'assurance qualité des formations en ligne des universités virtuelles. Il y a un gap à ce niveau-là et je pense que c'est quelque chose que nous devons prendre en considération. Au niveau de l'UNESCO, nous avons l'Institut international pour l'enseignement et l'éducation en ligne qui est basé à Shenzhen et on travaille effectivement sur ces éléments de l'assurance qualité dans l'enseignement et concernant particulièrement les formations et des dispositifs virtuels, sans oublier effectivement ce que nous appelons les laboratoires virtuels, les expérimentations en ligne. Merci.
Okay, thank you so much, UNESCO, for your contribution. But I can assure you, open and distance learning in the ASGQA, it is covered. It might not be covered as we want to, but we have taken note of the recommendation and the concern. It is actually there, but maybe it might need to be strengthened. There's another question of concern about the baseline. Maybe Elizabeth, do you want to chip in a bit on that? Do you want to say something on that? Thank you.
Regarding the, regarding the availability of the ASGQA or regarding its coverage of open distance learning? Yeah, no, just to remind that there's a flyer in your bags that talks about or announces the ASGQA user's guide, and there's a barcode there which you can scan, where you will get the mobile version of all 3 linguistic versions. The Arabic is coming shortly, and it's also on the HAQAA website at this stage. So it is indeed available.
Your voice is going out, but it was trying to revive it a bit. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I think we are coming to the end of our session. The new kid on the block is there to be used. Is there to help institutions and quality assurance agencies to implement the African standards and guidelines for quality assurance. So receive it and take it with joy, and let's hope you continue to use it in your daily practices. I would like to thank once again Florence for presenting the user's guide to the participants, and the task force, which did a very great job in producing this document and the contributions from the participants. We really appreciate it. And thank you so much. Okay. Yeah, we can go. I will stay.
Thank you, Chair, for a wonderful job, and your team for developing the user's guide for the SGQA. Another round of applause for this team for the good job they did. We are going to go for our next presentation, but before that, I can see that the digestion process is ongoing. I would like to request all of you to stand up for 1 minute. And Dr. Violet, kindly come forward and just help us to wake up a bit, just 1 minute. Yes.
Thank you. I'm just thinking of one because there are many. Okay, let's go. Go. That's the way I'm doing. The sleep will go. One, we go, one. We go, we go.
Thank you so much, Violet. Yes. Merci beaucoup, merci beaucoup. Vous pouvez vous asseoir. Nous allons procéder à la présentation suivante qui va porter sur la poursuite. Votre attention, s'il vous plaît. Please, your attention, please. Now I can see you are awake. It's good. You are going to proceed to our next presentation. La présentation va porter sur la poursuite de la diffusion des ASG qui est au sein des agences d'assurance qualité, impact et recommandations, et le président est Saturné Enzo Gayoka. Monsieur le Président, vous êtes le bienvenu.
Nous voulons remercier Dr Makoko qui nous a réveillés. Effectivement, on commençait à somnoler. Merci beaucoup. Donc, j'invite les panélistes à nous rejoindre. Abdou, mon cher Jeffy, Abdallah, s'il vous plaît. Bon après-midi à toutes et à tous. Tout d'abord, nous voulons remercier l'initiative HAQAA qui nous réunit à Accra pour faire le point de ces réalisations ces 3 dernières années qui, incontestablement, ont contribué au développement de l'enseignement supérieur en Afrique. Donc, la présente session qui nous réunit tout à l'heure est consacrée à une brève présentation des résultats et des recommandations du projet poursuite de la diffusion des ASG au sein des agences d'assurance qualité, qui a été conduit conjointement par le réseau africain francophone des agences nationales d'assurance qualité, RAFANAC, East African Higher Education Quality Assurance Network, IQUAN, et National Council for Quality Evaluation of Higher Education of Mozambique, NAC, et le RAFANAC étant le chef de file du consortium. Donc, je suis Saturnin Zongayoka, directeur de programme en charge de l'assurance qualité au sein du Conseil africain et malgache pour l'enseignement supérieur, le CAMES. Donc, je suis entouré par des représentants des organismes et faisant partie du consortium qui a mené cet important projet. Donc, à ma droite, j'ai Abdou Lahat Sissé, coordonnateur administratif et technique de l'Autorité nationale d'assurance qualité de l'enseignement supérieur du Sénégal, ANAQ-SUP. Il est le représentant du RAFANAC. Et juste à côté de moi, non, de l'autre côté, donc c'est le docteur Abdallah Bagouma, President of IQUAN. Juste à côté de moi, c'est le docteur Jeffrey Mukura from CNAC, the representative of Southern Africa region and the Portuguese-speaking countries. Il faut dire que ce projet complète parfaitement les 14 projets nationaux de dissémination menés par les participants au cours de formation qui ont été largement présentés hier et qui visent à mieux faire connaître les ASG au niveau des établissements d'enseignement supérieur et à les utiliser comme outil pour renforcer l'assurance qualité au niveau national et institutionnel. Donc, le présent projet multilingue et interrégional a permis la dissémination des ASG dans les réseaux respectifs, dans les agences nationales d'assurance qualité et dans les commissions nationales. Donc, mes collègues présents ici vont donner de plus amples informations. Donc, voici le déroulé, comment se déroulera la session. Donc, les trois vont intervenir successivement sur le projet et ensuite, il y aura une discussion avec l'Assemblée. On me rappelle que nous avons 45 minutes, donc on va essayer de tenir dans le temps. Cher Abdou, vous avez donc la parole pour donner brièvement l'aperçu du projet.
Merci beaucoup. Est-ce qu'on peut avoir les diapos? Bon, en attendant donc d'avoir les diapos, je commencerai par remercier HAQAA et mes collègues du comité et l'ensemble des participants à ce projet pour dire que nous, notre projet se situe un peu à la deuxième phase, c'est-à-dire qu'à la suite, le premier diapo, à la suite de l'élaboration donc de ces ASG qui ont pour objectif donc d'avoir une compréhension commune, de soutenir de la qualité, de renforcer les capacités, de favoriser le dialogue et la collaboration. Notre projet qui est la suite de la phase 1, donc, et s'inscrit dans cette dynamique à travers donc une dissémination de ces ASG-QA à travers nos différents réseaux qui sont représentés ici autour de la table. Diapo suivante. It's not working. Par rapport à ce projet, nous avons deux composantes pour ce projet et qui visent un certain nombre d'objectifs et à la clé de ces objectifs, quelques livrables. Je commencerai par rappeler que ce projet n'est pas un projet d'évaluation des agences, c'est un projet de dissémination. Donc, vraiment, il ne faudrait pas voir les résultats comme étant des résultats d'évaluation. Le projet est composé d'une étude de cartographie qui nous permet de faire le mapping de l'ensemble des tendances observées au sein de nos agences par rapport à ces AEG, mais profiter d'événements organisés par nos réseaux ou par HAQAA pour faire de la dissémination. Tout ceci dans le but de sensibiliser, de pousser à l'appropriation, à l'acceptation, au dialogue autour des AEG, mais surtout de renforcer la capacité des parties prenantes et d'aider les pays qui sont en train de créer des agences ou qui sont en train de réviser les outils d'évaluation, d'avoir un peu de la matière qui les permette donc de faire cette révision tout en s'inscrivant dans cette dynamique d'harmonisation. Plusieurs livrables donc attendus à travers ce projet. C'est des rapports régionaux, nationaux et un rapport global qui fera la situation de cette dissémination à travers les pays qui sont concernés par ce projet. Diapo suivante. Quels sont les pays qui sont concernés par ce projet? Nous avons 6 pays francophones, 6 pays lusophones et 6 pays anglophones. Pour les pays francophones, nous avons donc le Sénégal, la Guinée, le Mali, le Maroc, la RDC et le Burundi. Pour le réseau africain donc de l'assurance qualité se situant en Afrique de l'Est, HAQAA2, vous avez donc le Rwanda, la Tanzanie, l'Ouganda, le Kenya, Soudan du Sud et le Burundi. Vous voyez que le Burundi apparaît 2 fois parce qu'il fait partie de ces 2 réseaux. Pour la zone lusophone, nous avons le Mozambique, le Cap-Vert, Zimbabwe, l'Afrique du Sud, l'Angola, Sao Tomé et Principe. Mais ici, il faut signaler que tous les pays ont réagi, sauf le Zimbabwe et Sao Tomé qui n'a pas réagi par rapport au questionnaire. Jeffy pourra en revenir. Et nous avons aussi donc impliqué les organes régionaux comme le CAMES et l'UICA. Pour mener à bien ce projet, on a impliqué toute la chaîne donc de décision par rapport au réseau, aux agences. Et nous avons impliqué les présidents des réseaux ou de zones, les responsables, les directeurs des différentes agences, les responsables des organismes régionaux, la coordination du projet, le groupe de travail technique, parce que la coordination, c'est adjugé d'un groupe de travail et où on a 2 experts par zone. Dans la zone francophone, 2 experts, dans la zone lusophone, 2 experts et dans la zone anglophone, 2 experts. Ce qui nous permet en fait de travailler en synergie pour arriver à l'ensemble de ces livrables, donc 16 livrables au niveau national, un livrable au niveau de chaque réseau, plus le rapport global. Et pour vous donner un peu l'historique de l'implémentation de ce projet, nous avons démarré en janvier à Nairobi, par une rencontre donc qui a regroupé l'ensemble des parties prenantes, et c'est là où nous avons défini les outils et les activités. Et ensuite, donc, nous avons lancé proprement dit le travail au mois de mars en ligne, et on a commencé à travailler par le mapping ou la cartographie à travers un outil en ligne qu'on a élaboré, partagé et validé et ensemble, qui couvre toutes les parties des AEG, la partie A, la partie B et la partie C. Et nous avons terminé tout ce travail de collecte, d'analyse et de traitement de données et des rapports des pays vers fin juillet. Et nous avons produit tous les rapports relatifs au réseau du RAFANAC, de l'Afrique de l'Est HAQAA2 et de la zone lusophone. Et le dernier rapport produit est le rapport global qui a été produit fin novembre, et c'est ce rapport qui va être partagé, les résultats tout à l'heure par mes collègues. On aura aussi une dernière rencontre de partage qui est prévue en décembre avec l'ensemble des parties prenantes qui avaient participé au lancement. Pour l'implémentation des activités de dissémination, ces activités sont essentiellement des activités organisées par nos réseaux. La première activité a été organisée à Bujumbura, donc la deuxième donc à Dar es Salaam, et la troisième a été organisée à Maputo au cours donc de la rencontre organisée par HAQAA2. Nous avons aussi profité de toutes les activités de HAQAA2, j'en ai cité ici 2, et pour lesquelles nous avons donc disséminé ces AEG à travers donc des plénières, à travers des groupes de travail. Et présentement, ce rapport va être partagé Et au sein des pays aussi, ce partage continue. Je donne juste l'exemple du Sénégal. Actuellement, on est en train de réviser nos référentiels d'évaluation qui ont été élaborés en 2013 et nous nous inspirons beaucoup des AEG pour faire cette révision, ce qui nous permet un peu encore de renforcer donc cette harmonisation que nous voulons au niveau africain. Et ça se passe de la même façon aussi au niveau du CAMES et de l'UICA. Voilà un peu donc globalement l'organisation et la structuration de ce projet de dissémination. Merci, Président.
Merci. Merci. Merci, cher Abdou, pour cette présentation globale du projet. Now, dear Abdallah, we invite you to briefly give project result, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, dear delegates to this conference. So, Abdul has given us the background, but also the previous session on the user guideline, it also gave us some background again to the ASGQA, because what we have not done for this session, unlike the previous dissemination, we have not gone back to the parts, but the previous session did that to a certain extent. So for me, all I will do is to share again, why can't it move? Joel, why did you touch? Okay. So as by the participating countries, we had identified 6 countries per network, and we generally got positive response because the survey tool was filled by all countries except the SNAC level. 2 countries were still filling the tool. So, and also at the regional level, the CAMES and also the IUCA, they filled the tool. So that one confirms one of the results is that actually they are ready. They are ready to actually implement or align themselves to the ASGQA. So in terms of the general observation, as for the responses, some of the questions were partially responded to. Others, because this was not an assessment, they could also respond by referring us to the specific legal instruments, but we were not meant to do that. And then also some extent of either not some lack of understanding or different understanding of the question. So in view of that, and in line with the 3 parts of the ASG QA, that's part A, part B, and part C. So we have the results. They are for part A. Generally, there were part A of the survey tool was aimed at establishing the extent of alignment, but also the extent to which the national level, in this case, the quality assurance agencies, had in place the specific guidelines or policies, etc. For instance, as we are aware, or we may be aware, the ASG QA Part A, for instance, it has these standards: vision, on mission, on strategic objectives, on governance, etc. So Part A aimed at only establishing the extent of alignment, rating from 1 to 5, 1 being fully aligned. Okay, so as you may see here, just quickly. Oh, sorry. It's not so. Okay, let me go to the. Okay, thank you. Yeah. So quickly, those are the results. I was sharing that the section A of the tool aimed at establishing the extent to which the quality assurance agencies or the quality assurance framework at the national level had in place the specific guidelines or the specific either policies, legal instruments with the specific standards in Part A. And I was giving an example, for instance, at the national level, say either country X, does a quality assurance agency have in place either guidelines that enable assuring equality in terms of either human resources? So that was the logic, just alignment, nothing else. And this is the picture in general, as you may see here, 5 being fully aligned. So most of them, they responded that yes, we have these documents that also provide for us to regulate or to quality assure policies, to quality assure governance, to quality assure infrastructure, etc. Then one country did not respond only to that part, but it responded to other parts. So as you may see, three was like the list. We didn't have 2 or 1 under this part. Then for part B of the ASG. So it is in terms of, in view of the above, you saying, yes, I have guidelines that provide for quality assuring human resources or for governance. So this one was in terms of the methods, the processes, okay? I liked the observation here, the difference between the policies and what procedures. So here, this one, it was about if you answered that, yes, I have a document that enables us to ensure governance. So here, we only wanted to know the extent to which they actually implement what they have said they have in place. So again, now the ticks, these ones, this means, yes, they complied, they responded to us that, yes, they apply them. They apply them, for instance, when the independence of evaluation, the extent to which they think that the policies above that require them to be independent or to ensure fairness. Here, most of them, they said, yes, we do that. Of course, there was only one that was partially, and then the other one did not respond. But generally, as you may see here, they generally indicated, yes, that we do that. Again, as our coordinator has said, Mr. Abdul, our work was not to go deep and, and then investigate. It was just actually to disseminate. So the mapping embedded in its dissemination, you see, that was the bit of this process. Then part C was, how do you, now, you have said, I have a policy to ensure governance. I have a policy to ensure finance. Then you've said, yes, I generally use them. Now, part C, in view of, again, part C of the ASGQA, this one was now, okay, if you do that, how do you ensure your own quality? Okay, the quality assurance of the quality assurance agencies. You remember the peer reviews, the self-evaluation, the self-assessment. So here again, this was the question. Across the board, all of them, they have legal instruments. They are established by, we know all the quality assurance agencies on the continent, they are public institutions. So whether they are at the ministry level, whether they are quality assurance agencies, they are established by some legal instrument. So to them, that one is a way of them being able to be quality assured. And then the other example, again, the internal quality assurance processes. Again, this one, we saw that, yes, they have generally, they use the established government processes, but again, within the best practices or the nice practices, we found out that, again, there is this good practice, the periodic review of quality assurance agencies. So you see, most of them, they said, okay, yes, we sometimes do similar practices, but generally the answer was that no, we have not yet done that. As you can see, the XXX here, they are more compared to the other section. So in conclusion, under findings, at the regional level, you remember the tool was aligned to the 3 parts of the ASG. So CAMES, in line with its mandate, because they also do accreditation. So for them, they filled all parts, part A, part B, and part C. The University Council, because they have not started accreditation, they only coordinate establishment of quality assurance guidelines. They filled part A to show us the extent to which they are aligned with the quality assurance guideline. So, Chair, thank you so much. I submit and I hand over. Yes.
Okay, thank you, dear Abdallah, for presenting project results.
Okay.
Jeffy, would you like to present the recommendation made by your consortium, please?
Okay. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, everybody, for listening. I think we have heard the process, the project of the dissemination of the ASGQA, and we have listened to the results of all the countries that were surveyed. And now we are going to give some conclusions we have reached as a coordination committee, and also would like to leave some of the recommendations that can be considered for the future. And one of the conclusions we have reached in this project is that, with the exception of few countries, which I'm not going to mention by names, no significant gaps were identified between all the countries that were surveyed. I think you would see from Abdallah's results that it ranged between 5, 4, 3 across all the countries. And it was because this was a self-assessment exercise, and the answers which were provided by the countries surveyed were not verified or checked. So we just hoped that what they are telling us is what they are doing. That concept of trust or community of trust is coming in here. Since it was not an evaluation exercise, so we were not checking whether actually they have the policies, whether actually they are doing the practices which are required by the ASG, but we just took that, okay, because of trust, we assumed that, okay, that is what they have. So all the countries are developing benchmarks and guidelines that are broadly in line with the ASG QA. And also we came to the conclusion that at the dissemination events, it became clear that people know that there exists a continental framework in the form of the ASG, but the exact content, that is the 3 parts, the detailed standards and guidelines for each part, were not clear to everybody. So therefore, there's need for training, more training, and also the need for the user's guide we've just presented this afternoon, so that it makes clear to everybody what this ASGQA is all about. And one of the conclusions or the findings is that, as you can see from the countries participating, you see RAFANAC is a network, ECAN is a network, but KINAC is not a network. It's a quality assurance agency, because there was no network for the Lusophone countries. And this project, I think we can say, was a catalyst for the creation of the Lusophone network, because I understand the processes and all that were in place for the establishment of the Lusophone network. The idea was there in the pipeline, but it was an idea, but because of this project, there was a need to establish a Lusophone network in order to disseminate the. So we can say that this project managed to catalyze the establishment of the Lusophone network, which is very good. And also in terms of collaboration between different linguistic regions, you see, RAFANAC, ECAN, Lusophone coming together with all these difficulties in language interpretation. It was not a difficult thing, but we've managed to produce something which is very good because of the dissemination project, which helped us to bring all the linguistic regions together with one objective: to disseminate the ASG. I think this was very good and well commended. In terms of recommendations, I think we have talked about open and distance learning. We also see the need to do more in terms of guidelines for open and distance learning, doctoral research and innovation. It is there in the ASG, but I think there might need be more work in the future to clearly capture open and distance learning, because open and distance learning that is reflected it was before the COVID. But now, because of this COVID, I think there's need to readdress that aspect. And we recommend that for the future, it has to be relooked. We also recommend that the dissemination projects should continue under HAQAA2 so that the ASG QA can reach every corner where teaching and learning takes place, because we believe that quality can only be assured by those responsible for providing higher education, which is the teachers, the students, which are very far remote. So we want the ASG to reach there so that we can improve the quality. And we are also recommending that for the ASG to succeed, I think a lot of things have been said about the involvement of stakeholders. We also believe that if both external and external stakeholders are involved as part of this process, that means the ASG can be strengthened. And also, we recommend the efforts being done by HAQAA2 initiative in building capacity for both internal quality assurance and external quality assurance should be multiplied during HAQAA2 in terms of numbers in order for the implementation of the ASG to be successful. We know the project is doing more, but for example, if you look the number of teachers in higher education in Africa, in compared to, for example, training 500 or 100 practitioners, we need more so that quality can be achieved across Africa. And in parallel, we also challenge higher education institutions to come up with learning programs, degree programs that deal with quality assurance in order to improve institutional capacity in developing quality assurance units and running quality assurance agencies. Because I know in most African universities, very few are offering degree programs in quality assurance. And we recommend short courses in quality assurance so that we would not depend on projects like HAQAA1, HAQAA2, HAQAA3 to capacity buildings, but also higher education institutions should play a part in order to build capacity within their higher education institutions. I know some of the institutions right now they are including, even if they don't have a degree program in quality assurance, but they are trying to include quality assurance modules in other degree programs. I think which is a positive move nowadays. And we strongly believe that these steps will facilitate the implementation of the ASG within the African higher education space and establish a strong foundation for future development. With these recommendations, I submit. Thank you.
Nous remercions les panélistes qui ont pu faire une brève présentation de ce projet multilingue et interrégional sur la dissémination des ASG. Il faut le dire, ça s'est fait en très peu de temps et nous les félicitons. Et nous voulons maintenant nous tourner vers l'Assemblée pour vos contributions par des questions ou des observations. Vous avez donc la parole. Oui.
Yes, thank you very much for the job well done. That adds value, and the recommendations too are very practical. We hope that they will come and we can improve. I just want to come back to one issue. Now the dissemination is taking place, and the user's guide is also now available. Where you have done the dissemination, I hope very soon also you just push the user's guide so that together they get acclimatized to this new document, which contains the ASGs and the guidelines. Number two is I know that we have talked about these standards as non-prescriptive. Be that as it may, you know, since they came out, I've just been studying them and looking at what else can be improved on the standards and guidelines. I know later on such a stage will be reached. Then I looked at it and said, it's more qualitative. Almost everything is qualitative, but we don't have quantitative components. Can I just give an example? I just give one example. If we say a lab, a standard lab should have which dimensions, number one. Number two, I can talk of staff-student ratios. Because they are non-prescriptive, you would then say our ranges of teacher-student ratio could be between this and that, so that there's a wide range within which institutions and countries can adopt at least a certain range of teacher-pupil ratio. Number two, as for the dimensions, I'm just giving those two examples so that people understand what I'm trying to say, but by the numerical value addition to the ASGs, the lab, what dimension, length and width, and what other parameters are in there, right? Having said that, I think it's something very critical, because if they are more qualitative, how are we going to measure them? How are we going to check compliance, even if we are underscoring the issue of them being non-prescriptive? Thank you.
Okay, merci beaucoup, chère Violette. Oui. Vous pouvez. Oui. Oui.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the work done. There is one aspect of quality assurance which I have not heard mentioned, and that is credit accumulation and transfer. If we are going to promote equality of programs in Africa, and we do not have a system of credit accumulation and transfer, that is going to be a problem. As you know, there are in the world two main approaches to credit accumulation and transfer. The credit hour approach, which is generally used in the United States, and the notional study hours approach, which is used now, I think, in Europe and in the UK and parts of Africa. The issue is, where are we going in relation to this? And Dr. Makuku mentioned the issue of measuring quality. Without credit accumulation and transfer systems, how do we measure the equivalence of programs? That is my submission. Thank you.
OK, merci pour votre contribution. Oui, Madame.
So much, Chair, and for your presentation. I work at the Commission for University Education, and we really used the African Standard and Guidelines to enrich our standards and guidelines. So most of the components we enriched using the African Standard and Guidelines. And the aspect of Odell, even though it was just maybe one or two aspects, it broadened our usage, because we said, no, you have signed the Agenda 2060, the African Agenda 63, and you signed it and you are part of it, so we must institutionalize and mainstream ASG in our standards. So currently we have a revised standards, and we've used most of the parameters which is here. So what we did is very good for agencies like ours. However, the big question is capacity for the self-assist for the agencies. We are not really ready as old quality assurance agencies to be evaluated. So I think we need to encourage and capacity build. I didn't hear Nigeria talk about being evaluated, nor Kenya, because the fear is there, what you'll find. But the time to do self-assessment and volunteer for that self-assessment would have been really ideal for us, so that the countries which are just beginning can also learn from us in our context. So I believe the ASG is a broad guide to all of us. It's a benchmark with minimum. So we can't really have so much in it. But for us, we have now to have those prescriptions Violet is talking about. But I think we've moved from prescription to improvement in our institutions. Because when you really look for so much compliance, there's a lot of resistance. So ASG really helped us at the time when we needed it. So I really appreciate what you have done. And the analysis is a step to also looking at what the agencies are doing. We might not have applied to be assessed self in the HAQAA2 initiative. But what you have done, you've already looked at if we are really applying the ASG in our standards. So I think that is a great improvement for all of us. Thank you.
OK, merci. On va prendre deux dernières questions. Est-ce qu'il y a deux? Oui, il y a un collègue de l'UNESCO. Oui,
thank you very much. First of all, I want to thank you so much for the good job. And as you know, we are following what you are doing on the ground. Secondly, I want to make a link between ASG and the creation of National Quality Assurance Agency. Because in Africa, the demands in terms of quality assurance are enormous. of course. And for the creation of a national quality agency, it is a way to reinforce the capacity of our countries. For instance, at the UNESCO level, we know that thanks to UNESCO Shenzhen project, we try to create 10 national quality agencies in 10 countries, but it's not enough. We need to continue. We are also working with UMOA, of course, CAMES, to reinforce the capacity of the Vice Chancellor, President of University, and senior staff, and also researchers and professors in capacity building since, let's say, 4 years ago. So we need to continue. The demand are huge, and of course, at the university level, as you know, there is continuously renewing of staffs. So when you train some person 5 or 10 years ago, they move to another position, and there is another demand in terms of capacity building. So we need to continue the capacity building because they are changing at the rate of quality assurance units within the universities, within the higher education institution. But of course, we need, when talking about quality assurance, also to see how we can green our higher education institution. This is a new demand coming also from the ground, coming from what we can say, the climate change. For instance, we are facing this, and we need to take this into account. Also, how quality assurance also can tackle this issue. Thank you.
Ok, merci, cher Salifou. Vraiment la dernière question. Oui.
Ok. Merci, Président. Moi, je voudrais s'y poser un souci parce qu'on parle de l'avenir et des perspectives. Nous, la Mauritanie, on n'est pas dans le CAMES. Et nous sommes toujours oubliés dans le cadre des renforcements des capacités, dans le cadre des projets. Et honnêtement, c'est un problème posé. J'en ai parlé à mon ministre, j'en ai parlé aux responsables du CAMES pour essayer de rapprocher les deux points de vue. Et dans la perspective, nous voudrons qu'on ne soit pas l'enfant oublié. Surtout qu'on est une agence toute jeune. On est la plus jeune agence, à ma connaissance, née le 4 mars 2021. Nous avons fait assez d'efforts et nous avons été très osés à suivre une visite d'appui et de soutien. Et là, honnêtement, on voudrait bien se rapprocher. On est dans notre communauté africaine, on est avec nos collègues, mais il y a des organisations où on n'est pas là-bas et puis on est souvent oublié, quoi. Donc, c'est une demande que j'adresse pas seulement au CAMES, mais aux autres organisations.
Ok, merci beaucoup.
Okay,
nous avons pris note. Il y a l'AUF qui est là, il y a le RAFANAC, le CAMES, on travaille souvent ensemble. Donc, je pense que nous avons pris note.
Le RAFANAC, vous n'avez pas besoin de faire du plaidoyer. On est bien assis, Inch'Allah.
Ok, merci beaucoup.
Nos frères sénégalais s'occupent bien de nous.
Ok, merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup pour vos différentes contributions. Donc, on va demander très rapidement aux panélistes d'apporter quelques éléments de réponse aux questions et puis on pourrait discuter après.
Very much, Chair. So I will start with the one, Dr. Violet, Dr. Makoko. Yeah, the aspect of measurement and or whether the ASG, the extent to which they should prescribe. I personally think that since they are meant to provide a point of reference, and as we know, there is a standard and a guideline. Each standard has it has guidelines. So while I believe that there is room for improvement, but I think generally them being at that high level serves better when it comes to the intended purpose, because again, the diversity, those guidelines for each standard, they give room for different contexts to align themselves, but also them to be used. So this is my thinking, but I still confirm that yes, there should be room for improvement. And then the second one, Professor Angara, I think this one it's on schedule. I think there will be a session on acts on the credit accumulation and transfer system. So this is coming. Yes, it was relaunched. Then Dr. Beatrice, thank you so much for confirming that indeed the SGQA are being used. And also for, in terms of the QA of the quality assurance agencies being either lacking capacity or not being ready, it is one aspect, but I think they are preoccupied with the priorities. These quality assurance agencies have a lot of work. Institutions are applying for programs. You are supposed to. So we need to have actually a mechanism. How do we approach them without appearing to actually also, the way institutions get bothered by these demands. Also, the QA agencies actually, it's a way to make sure that they also prioritize. But finally, on that issue, I appreciate your reflection on how we may add now the number of the peer review of the external quality assurance review the agencies, because these ones, there are so many agencies that have at least participated in this evaluation. And then, of course, yes, Dr. Salif, yes, I agree also. There's a need to actually keep multiplying, keep producing. So we need to just make efforts to have more and more quality assurance experts, because I will just give an example. Like back at home, whenever higher learning institutions sent staff to go for PhDs, when they come, they go somewhere or they are appointed by the government. Our president said, that's not the issue. The issue is you need to keep, because the needs. I think, us to know that actually now quality assurance has been embraced, because I think we went through the understanding the resistance. I think we have passed beyond the resistance to quality assurance. Now people understand and now the beauty. So thank you so much.
All the questions, I think they've been responded to. But what I wanted to add was maybe taking on what Violet is just commented. But what I wanted to say was the ASG is not a finished product. It can be revised. It's an ongoing, it's an ongoing project that can be revised when the need arises. So the incorporation of quantitative standards, I think, is still open. That can be done in the future. That is highly noted. And people-teacher ratio, I think, is also noted. That can be incorporated in the future. I think that is what I can recommend. Yeah.
OK. Donc, nous remercions les panélistes ainsi que l'Assemblée pour vos contributions qui ont permis... On aurait donné une minute. Bon, vous avez une minute. C'est bon, 1 minute.
Yeah. Pour remercier tout le monde, pour dire que toutes vos suggestions peuvent intégrer HAQAA2, parce que ce n'est qu'un début, hein. C'est tout ce que nous avons réalisé, ce n'est qu'un début. Et n'oublions pas que nous sommes à la première version des HAQAA. Mettons en œuvre, évaluons et continuons à améliorer. Merci.
Pour vos contributions, je vous encourage à continuer les discussions dans les couloirs. Merci encore.
Thank you so much, Chair and the team, for a wonderful job of disseminating the HAQAA. Now we are going to the last presentation, last session of the day. That is on the update on HAQAA and the next steps. This session will be chaired by Professor Peter Okebukora. Prof, you're most welcome.
Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I have the pleasure of inviting the co-chair for the technical working group on HAQAA, who is going to make the presentation, Anna Nampule, to please join me on this side of the room. We're talking about harmonization, and what comes straight to my mind was when we were having lunch, and I took pieces of some yam, some plantain, and all that, and they harmonized in my stomach. Yeah, and Dr. Makuku has scattered the harmonization because he asked us to be jumping up and down. The African higher education space is diverse, as Professor Olushola, not Olusola, you are going to take a 2-unit course in the pronunciation of his name with me. It's Olushola, Shola, not Sola, Oyewole. The African Union came up with the 2063 agenda, and a key strand of that agenda is how we can harmonize our higher education system. In my view, the higher education looks like a tree. The branches are there, so you are putting them all together. And the last 1 or 2 days, we have been listening to the branches of that big tree on harmonization. This last session, which is starting at 4:30, we're to end this session at 4:30 now. So, but I have good news for you. We are stopping this session at 9 p.m. So be ready to enjoy the session. Anna Maria Napoli will be giving us interesting perspectives on what the technical working group, there are 2 adjectives qualifying that group. That group is technical, and that group is working. So we have been working, have we not? Yes, she's going to tell us the membership of that group at some point and present the recommendations of our TWG, the Technical Working Group, on the Pan-African Quality Assurance and Accreditation Agency, one of the branches of that big tree on harmonization. She did say to me that she will spend about 30 minutes. What we want, the deliverable of this session is to, because the last one that the technical working group will be interacting with the stakeholders. We want to have your feedback on a number of the proposals that the group has made over the last several months. My pleasure, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, to invite Anna Maria Napule, who is co-chair of HAQAA Working Group, to take the floor. Anna.
Thank you, Professor Okebukola. Thank you, all delegates of this conference, for listening. I think Apio, is still trying to open the document, but while she is doing this, yes, Professor, I am making this presentation on behalf of the Technical Working Group, from which is part Professor Okebukola, who is also co-chair, Professor Oloshula, Zachary Johansen, Bella Satar, Maria Kello, James Joe, Anna Grover, Elizabeth Apio. And this technical working group had a very, very important assistance from Obreal in assisting us during the meetings, taking notes for our work. Now the presentation is on. So the presentation includes information on the HAQAA and HAQAA, the distinction. And HAQAA has part of HAQAA. HAQAA without the F and 2 A's, and HAQAA with F. I am going to present the stage of the work or our roadmap, the mission and objectives of HAQAA, the 4 phases of HAQAA, because our suggestion is to implement HAQAA in different phases, in an evolutive phases, and the architecture and the proposals of next steps according to the recommendations of stakeholders. The Pan-African Quality Assurance and Accreditation Framework. Elizabeth, she made a short presentation about HAQAA, but we bring it back because HAQAA, the agency, is part of this large framework from African Union to harmonize higher education in Africa, particularly in the issue of quality assurance. As you can see, HAQAA integrate different action lanes, and at the bottom there is the Continental Accreditation Agency. Next slide. And this agency is what we are talking about, the Pan-African Quality Assurance and Accreditation Agency. I will say HAQAA during the presentation. Next slide. So our working, the stages, the roadmap started, we started in 2019 when the technical working group were endorsed. And we started by analyzing different situations, analyzing how other institutions, regional institutions, carrying out accreditation, carrying out quality assurance are organized, and even other institutions abroad Africa. It was for us to get inspiration to develop our proposal. After that, we suggested 4 progressive phases, and we submitted the document on phases for the consideration from the African Union Commission, and we compared it with other initiatives like HAQAF, the African Continental Qualification Framework, which is another project under the AUC. And we had a support from AU, and they endorsed the consultation on this document. After that, we had the consultation process. we had an online survey with 122 responses from 26 countries. We think this is representative to get opinion on what we were suggesting in the 4 phases. After that, we had workshops, consultations workshop, presenting the results of the survey and listening to the stakeholder to get this proposal as a participative construction. We had a workshop in Addis Ababa in October. We had another workshop in Maputo during the African conference, and we made a presentation at the advisor board meeting of the HAQAA2 initiative on 6th December. Next slide. The mission of the agency is to be lead African agency to coordinate, promote, and facilitate the implementation of the Pan-African Quality Assurance and Accreditation Framework in higher education sector, as implicated in the HAQAA action lines. There are 7 objectives. To increase the transparency of quality assurance and accreditation in Africa, to reinforce cooperation between national quality assurance and accreditation agencies, as well regional quality assurance networks, to reinforce cooperation between relevant qualification authorities and institutions related to recognition of higher education across borders, to promote alignment between qualifications framework, to facilitate higher education mobility between African Union member states, to support capacity development for countries, agencies, and institutions, to promote the African continental instruments and frameworks globally, and serve as an interface with other continents and agencies with similar missions. Those are the 7 objectives. I am not commenting because we have got consensus on mission and we have got consensus on objectives. The 4 phases suggested by the technical working group and consulted. There are 4 progressive stages. So we start from the phase 1. Next slide, please. Go again, and stop. Yes, the phase 1. In the phase 1, the HAQAA should be a facilitator and promoter. I will give more information ahead. And during the phase 2, yes, the phase 2, as you can see, what is intended to be the agency in the phase 1 comes to the other phases and it progresses. In the phase 2, it will be also gatekeeper for national quality assurance agencies. Let's go to phase 3. And in the phase 3, it will also accredit the Pan-African institutions. And during the phase 4, it could be an oversight body for all action lanes and tools related to higher education. What we say is that it can start from phase 1 to 3, but phase 4 is much complicated. It's more time because other action lines are being developed, and it should be very complex for the agents to take care of all action lines by the starting. but we can start from the phase 1. Promotional and facilitation is made the HAQAA initiative, for example, and we are saying that we need training, promotion of ASG, and other activities to continue. The features of each phase. As I said, during the phase 1, HAQAA should be promoting continental tools, facilitating collaboration between national quality assurance systems. During the phase 2, should be an institution to set up, register, or clearing house for national quality assurance, which comply with ASG. Phase 3, it is more complex, confer competency to the HAQAA to accredit Pan-African institutions and transnational institutions in the higher education sector. And higher education institutions can apply for accreditation on voluntary basis. In the phase 4, this, as I said before, is the much complex phase in which HAQAA should deliver its mission in overseeing all action lines of HAQAA. Let's go to the functions. I am not going to read completely those 13 functions. Those information are available in the homepage of HAQAA, and you can access to this. And I will go ahead saying that those functions are to fulfill all the 7 objectives previously presented. Next slide, please. Let's have a look to the framework, structure, governance, and setting up process of the HAQAA. Financial model. It should be by membership fees, fees for service, cost, countries' contributions. This point is not there, but it was considered. For some costs, some countries should volunteer to cost some activities of the agency. Intermittent donor funding. We highlight that initial budget is needed for the establishment of HAQAA. Legal structure. HAQAA is to be set by the head states of African Union, has an autonomous decision-making entity with legal personality. Governance. A membership model is proposed. We will see how it is organized in the next slide. Establishment and location. Interim housing of technical unity should be considered in an existing institution or organization. We let the decision on which institutions can hold interim for the AU to take the decision. So we know that AU is interested, but we let the decision to the African Union. Physical entity will be located in one member state that will be able to grant HAQAA a diplomatic status. So let us see the broad proposal of the governance structure. Next slide. the proposal is to have a General Assembly composed by Continental Higher Education Association and Quality Assurance Networks, regional higher education bodies, head of national quality assurance agencies or similar institutions. Here, two questions were raised. One, in some regions like SADC, there are another entities assisting the ministries in the issues of higher education. That is why we bring the SADC TCCA is the SADC Technical Committee for Certification and Accreditation. It is a technical advisor group for the ministers of higher education, science, and technology. And another question, we didn't list all regional networks. And another issue is on the countries that they do not have a national quality assurance agency or any independent similar institutions. And the proposal was to call the Minister of Education to nominate who could represent the country, not to let any country behind in this General Assembly. The second structure is the Board of Trustees or Executive Board to supervise and provide policy direction to the Secretariat. It is appointed by the General Assembly for 4 years. The board shall constitute committees, for example, the Register Committee and the Accreditation Committee. Those are only examples. Other committees should be set up according to the needs of the agency. Secretariat. The board, the day-to-day operation of HAQAA will be carried out through the HAQAA Secretariat. The Secretariat will have program officers under the leadership of the Executive Secretary General, who will be responsible for the implementation of activities and functions. The Secretariat will be overseen by an Executive Secretary General or Director who will be appointed for 3 or 4 or 5 years term, renewable once. Interim housing, I referred to this previously. So as we are talking about the Register Committee, let us see what are the role of the register. Is to register quality assurance agencies operating in Africa that substantially comply to HAQAA. Those admitted have been externally assessed against HAQAA, database of external quality assurance results pertaining to each registered quality assurance agency, provides relevant information on registered quality assurance agencies and higher education institutions subject to external quality assurance in line with the ASG. Facilitates the mutual acceptance, monitors and analyzes the status of legal frameworks of external quality assurance in agencies in Africa, monitors across borders quality assurance developments, and reduces opportunities for accreditation mills. Next steps. According to the recommendations of stakeholders, dissemination and advocacy of HAQAA for ownership and commitment is needed, and all of us are called to participate in this dissemination process. And a final document should be finalized. I don't like this repetition. should be presented to the AUC Commission for the approval and procedures in order to see soon as possible, HAQAA established. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so very much, dear Anna, co-chair. You've heard the story. That's actually the summary of a very long journey. I'd like you to also envision this, to be like an embryo, a baby to be born. A baby like HAQAA, you will not expect that baby, at the point of conception to just be a whole baby walking around. So that's why we have given you this story, and it's in phases. So you will see from a zygote, it will start to produce, multiply, and the arms will come out, all the other organs and so on, and then the baby is born. So what we're saying here is that HAQAA is not going to jump out of where it is born, running all over the place. It's going to be sequential. As time progresses, it's going to get the teeth, it's going to get all the other organs that will allow it to work very, very well, improve on it progressively. So we'll open the floor for your comments. Let me tell you where our reverse gear of this car is broken down. And that is to say whether or not HAQAA should be. That's done. That's done. No debate about that. Because the heads of state and government of the African Union had already blessed that HAQAA should be in place. So this is discussion around how it will be operationalized, the governance system, and all of that. So if you want to take the floor, please just raise your hand, and I will. I've seen 3 people. We're going to take the discussions in batches of 3. I can see my boss there, Professor Olushola Oyewole, the voice of Africa, HAQAA General. No, you are not speaking yet. I'm just going to identify those who will speak. Mind you, you are a member of HAQAA, the Technical Working Group. Yeah, so there's a limit to what you can say. I'm just joking. We have the UNESCO, head of UNESCO in Addis. He also used to be my boss in UNESCO, the multi-sectoral office in Abuja, but he has now Professor Salifu. Professor Salifu is the chair of higher education, and he has abandoned us in Abuja and headed for Addis. So that will be the second person. And there's a hand at the back there. Can you please stand up? Let me see. Yeah, yourself, sir. Yeah, we normally meet at breakfast. Yes. So I start with you, though. I start with you. Yeah, I start with you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Peter Okebukola.
Thank you.
And of course, Professor Anne-Marie Namfule. This is wonderful. The HAQAA, very good idea. And we say that it's not like we are thinking of starting it. It has started. The ship has left the harbor.
Yes, that's.
Thank you very much. Michael Wangai, Dr. Michael Wangai from Kenya, University of Nairobi, in charge of quality in that institution. My contribution is that from the concept that has been presented to us, we have seen that higher education institutions in the governance structure, there is missing, especially in the General Assembly. And therefore, I was thinking that probably in the different regions, we could have a criteria of including selected universities so that we feel part of the HAQAA That's my contribution. Thank you.
Can you identify yourself, sir, your name and the institution you represent?
Yes, Prof. I am Dr. Michael Wangai, Head of Quality Assurance, University of Nairobi, Kenya.
Thank you, sir. Prof. Salifo, please, UNESCO.
Hello?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay, thank you. Professor Obukola, thank you, my senior. First of all, I am not the head of liaison office in Addis Ababa. It is Dr. Rita.
Okay.
She is the head of liaison office to African Union and Economic Commission from Africa and representative to Ethiopia. So I'm head of education sector. Okay, thank you. I see, first of all, that it is a great job, but that the technical group done. And secondly, I want just to make a proposal. As you may know, this convention is part of the ecosystem of HAQAA. And this convention has its own committee. And the chair of the committee, I want to suggest that the chair of this committee may be part of the governance structure, because we have the committee and we have the secretariat.
Yes, sure.
So I led to the technical group to make the better choice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll now go to my boss, Professor Olushola Oyewole.
I'm a member of the committee, but the first thing I want to say is that I've fallen in love with the slides. So we need to appreciate the person who developed the slide for this presentation. My second comment is on the last slide. Probably can go to the last slide. Can we? It's appealed, yeah? The last slide. I thought you are in charge. That talks of next steps. Yes, thank you. Dissemination and advocacy of HAQAA for ownership and commitment, and then submission of the final document. Which one comes first? Are we submitting the reports now? Following that, we'll do dissemination.
I will yield. No, I'll come back to, I said I'll take in batches of 3. Yes, Anna, can you please respond to the 3?
Thank you. What comes first? What we are doing now is also, we are consulting and we are making a dissemination. So it is not easier to say, okay, let us submit and then we will disseminate. Maybe we can continue disseminating, listening to other stakeholders while we finalize the document and we submit it. The dissemination, what we are doing before the decision of the head states members is a kind of consultation. So I don't believe that we can say, okay, let us submit and go to dissemination. Let us continue disseminating the proposal, collecting ideas, and maybe we will get new ideas to enrich the document. Even if we submit to AUC, before it go to the decision by the state members, it could be strengthening. This is my opinion. And then about the participation of higher education institutions, if we go to the General Assembly, we see there is the Association of African Universities, and there are There are higher education institutions, regional higher education institution body. There are the voice of higher education. If we want to bring from institution, higher education institution to the General Assembly, it could be impossible because we could have to enlarge too much the General Assembly, but they are represented by their voices, regional voices and continental voices. About the proposal of UNESCO, we took note. Thank you.
And I actually like the last note that I would take note. I think what we should be doing at this stage will be when we have suggestions, we take note, because we'll then meet again and weigh the options relating to each of the suggestions and take a decision rather than knock this thing off at this stage. That's just my view. Thank you. Now let's take the next three. Yes, ma'am. Can you give me your? Can you give us your name and institutional affiliation? All right. Why there's some other hand up there? Yes. Can you just announce your? Oh, that's Sise. Oh, yeah. Sise is number 2. Yes, ma'am. No, your name. Pardon. Oh, Maria Luisa. Okay, that's fine. That's number 1. Let's take. Who is the third person? Oh, yes. Okay, over there. No, it's fine. Don't worry. We're going to take everybody. Yes, ma'am. What's the name now? Okay, another Maria. 2 Marias. Sandwiching Sise. So, madam, can you take the floor?
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Rita Bisunat, and I head the UNESCO Liaison Office in Addis Ababa. I want to say congratulations to the technical working group. This is really a great achievement because, this has long been coming. This has been over 4 years that we have been talking about HAQAA, and really, really, it is an amazing work. I would just like to follow up the question of Professor Olu. And about the dissemination, knowing the procedures of the AU, I think we really have to think about the procedures. Now, this is a document, which is a draft document. There are 2 things here. Is this now going to the STC, that is to the Ministers of Education, Science and Technology, as it is, without the legal, because right now this is the operational structure. There is no legal structure. Where are the statutes? Who is going to develop the statutes? Is it this working group? I'm not too sure. So these are the things that before you go to the AU, you talked about the AUC. It is not the AUC only, but it is the AU. You have to follow the procedures of the AU. It has to go to the STC, all the organs of the AU before it finally comes to the heads of state. But I would really like you to think about the legal structure, that is the statutes of the HAQAA, before you proceed to the AU, that is the STC and all the organs. This is what I want to say. Thank you.
Professor Sise.
Merci, Président. Moi, je voulais d'abord soutenir l'idée d'Anna Maria de continuer la consultation et la dissémination. Parce qu'au finish, c'est pas quoi les agences nationales vont jouer un rôle extrêmement important, parce que ce sont ces agences qui vont être même évaluées. Donc, ces agences constituent le cœur du PACOA. Et vous allez vous en rendre compte. Quand le document sera finalisé, qu'on envoie ça à l'Union africaine va faire la consultation au niveau des pays. Et nos pays respectifs vont donner ces documents pour instruction aux différentes agences. Donc, ce que nous disons au niveau de nos pays comme agence, c'est ce que va retenir nos ministres, parce que nous sommes l'autorité nationale d'assurance qualité dans nos différents pays. Donc, c'est extrêmement important de les consulter, de continuer et de trouver des consensus pour que si le dossier arrive au niveau des pays, qu'il soit facilement accepté par les parties prenantes. Ça, c'est la première chose. La deuxième chose aussi, c'est il faut qu'on fasse attention. Oui, il est bien de faire la représentation de toutes les parties prenantes, mais il faut qu'on mette quelques points de vigilance sur les conflits d'intérêts qui peuvent exister même dans le conseil d'administration en termes de parties prenantes. Je pense que le rôle et les responsabilités de l'ensemble des parties prenantes de l'écosystème de l'assurance qualité, que ce soit le niveau institutionnel, le niveau national, le niveau régional et africain, doit être clairement défini pour pour ne pas tomber dans encore une structure qu'on va créer qui ne sera pas fonctionnelle. Et si cette structure n'est pas fonctionnelle, on aura des structures parallèles, des pratiques parallèles. Troisième élément, depuis le début, moi j'étais là quand on concevait le PACA. Il y a des points de consensus, ça c'est clair. La phase 1, la phase 2, on est d'accord. La phase 3, le consensus n'était pas très net. La phase 4, on attend. Maintenant, on n'a pas défini aussi quand commence une phase et comment termine l'autre la phase et quand est-ce démarre la deuxième ou la troisième phase. Je pense que ce serait intéressant d'avoir donc des éléments qui nous permettent d'avancer dans la mise en œuvre donc de PACA. Voilà un peu les quelques éléments sur lesquels je voulais attirer l'attention donc de l'auditoire. Merci.
And third, Madam Maria, yes.
Maria Madalena Chimpolo, de Inarés, de Angola. Primeiro, eu gostava de felicitar o grupo técnico pelo trabalho que tem desenvolvido ou que desenvolveu. O documento tem realmente uma estrutura completamente diferente do que foi apresentado anteriormente em Addis Abeba. Está muito mais simples, mais fácil de seguir, mas, contudo, acredito que também não é uma versão finalizada. E penso que estamos aqui mesmo para contribuir com os nossos parceiros para a melhoria deste documento. Eu tenho um bocadinho de preocupação em relação ao modelo de financiamento, porque fico com a impressão que há alguma incerteza em relação ao que vai ser pago com membership, com os serviços, porque nós não temos estabelecidos ainda os serviços, e com as doações que vão ser feitas, ou seja, não temos nada definido para o modelo de financiamento. E esta é a parte que mais me preocupa. Claro está, há sempre outros elementos a serem adicionados, mas também gostava de chamar a atenção para pensarmos bem, porque num dos slides estava a questão de localização. E a minha chamada de atenção aqui vai para o facto de, nesse momento, se calhar, ou com certeza, muita gente já deve estar a pensar que deve estar num sítio ou deve estar no outro. Não me faz muita diferença onde vai ficar. O que faz diferença é que não haja repetições, ou seja, não serem os mesmos elementos a fazerem parte desse grupo, pensar na diversificação, pensar que podem estar ou pode estar em regiões diferentes, com línguas diferentes e ao alcance de todos. Obrigada.
I yield now to Anna. 3 observations.
In this block, we had more contributions than questions, because even Maria, when she talked about the financial model, she's calling our attention to bring more detailed information on this. She's saying the information is not sufficient to reflect or to be sure that we are talking about a sustainable institution. And when she talked about the localization, she's saying the place is not the much important. The much important are people who are going to run the agents. That is what I understood. It is really a contribution for us, and we took note. And then about the conflict of interest, yes, it will be important when we define who can be doing what to have a description and to avoid the conflict of interest. Thank you for this recommendation. Maybe there are other elements to take into account, not only for the phase 3 and 4, but phase 3 and 4, they are more complex. That is why we say, let us see from where we can start. And we must start from where it is possible to do real things and not dream to start from where it will be impossible to go. That is why we suggest those 4 phases. So what I retain from Caesar is that let us start from 1 or 2 and go to 3 when we are well prepared. Yes, there is a difficult question, and maybe I will need your help because we are co-chair. Who is going to develop the legal structure?
Thank you. First, let me appreciate the 2 Professor Marias, Maria from UNESCO and Maria from Angola. Excuse me, Madam Rita, okay. I apologize most sincerely from the bottom of my heart. If you have a telescope, you will see the bottom of my heart. Yeah. You know, the 2 of them, not that we want it, but 2 of them said they appreciated the work that the technical working group had been doing. They opened their interventions, with that. And as I remarked, it's been technical, we've been working, and as we said, Professor Rita, for 4 years, actually beyond 4 years, this HAQAA thing had been in the air. When will the baby be born? We say it's in the pipeline. We have to break the pipe so that it comes out of the pipe. The Nigerian vice chancellors have been anxious for 2 or 3 years. Where is this HAQAA thing? So, but as you said, as Professor Rita said, there needs to be a statute, a law to make it to happen. But, ma'am, that is not is outside our mandate. Ours is to prepare the documentation, more or less, and hand over to AUC. And AUC will take the necessary steps to ensure that they follow their due process. Their due process. We don't have. I'm happy to tell you, we don't have any business with the statute. It's an organization, the agency that has been commissioned, the process commissioned by AUC. So all we'll do is to put everything together and hand over to AUC, and AUC will walk it through their legal system. Let me use the example of the Pan-African University. It started like that with consultations, feasibility studies, and at the 2008 UNESCO World Conference, where I served as Rapporteur General, the people didn't want to hear that, oh, it's going to fail Africa. No, but I put it in the communique and I read it at the general meeting, at the closing conference, at the closing of the conference, and it came out as part of the resolutions. And today, the act or like the statute for the establishment of Pan-African University had gone through the different processes. So I see the same thing happening here, that we will submit a bid and the African Union Commission will walk it through the due process in that organization. Right. We can still take some more. Douglas, Professor. Hold on, I need a third person. Yes, sir. Can you introduce yourself? Oh, yes, okay, I'm so sorry you were here, yeah. So the 3 of them, beginning with Douglas.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you, Anna, for an excellent presentation. As I was coming to the event and I saw this was going to be discussed, it came to my mind, my former chairman used to be the managing director of Coca-Cola. And he was said to me when we came with a proposal, what is the purpose? What is it going to do? And why should I spend my money on it? And I think you've given a very clear exposition and a clarity about a direction of travel. And one, it's not for me to tell colleagues in Africa what to do, but I thought I'd share a little bit of experience of our birth pangs. I attended my first ENCA event in 2003, and it was on the quality assurance of quality assurance agencies. It was before we had the European standards and guidelines. It was before we had the evaluation of agencies. We had been formed as a network to share practice. And then the Bologna process started, and we started to get involved in policy and policy development. And then came along the demand for us to go through some exposure, and we developed the review process. So we've evolved over 20 years to be what we are now, and more diverse than we were. But in that meeting, there was a proposal to create a European Quality Assurance Register. And my boss at the time, Peter Williams, you will know, was president of ENCA. And he said it was the worst mistake he'd ever made in his career, letting this organisation be created, because it transferred power from the agencies to another body set up by the governments. So I'm leaving that as an experience. And I actually believe in the register. I think it's a very good idea. The public can go and say there's an official list. But as it's developed in Europe, the register has published its own interpretation of the standards and guidelines, not the one that's shared in ESG by all the partners that created it. And that has caused some contention. And actually, you can see a direction of travel that the register is turning in to a regulator of the agencies. And I would just leave that there for you to ponder as you take your little steps. Actually, it's the Japanese approach to quality management, isn't it? Kaizen, little steps towards improvement. I commend you on all the work you're doing, and I really hope we can get the presentation shared, because I'd love to share it with colleagues back in Europe so they can see what the development is.
Many thanks, Douglas. Yes, Professor.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I would like to join those who are congratulating the technical committee for the working group for the excellent work done and for the presentation by Professor Madam Maria. You will have to excuse me, Chair, when I raise an issue I have raised before. First of all, I would like to know what is the thinking about how long the whole process will take. That's question one. And question two, at what stage will the various aspects of quality assurance be developed and implemented? And this brings me to the issue of credit accumulation and transfer systems. What is the thinking about when that can be done? Because it's a key issue in terms of cooperating with universities in other parts of the world and between African universities and other African universities. I will just give you an example. I was given a 5-year term to lead the Zimbabwe Council on Higher Education. And one of our goals was to develop a credit accumulation and transfer system within that period. And we managed to do that. And it was approved by the government. And we managed to get all the institutions to agree to a system which only one university was implementing. But they saw the sense of the national study hours approach. And now it is a system that is accepted in the country. This is something that can be done. And I'm just suggesting that is one of the priorities that the working group might think about. Thank you, Chair.
Over here, yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Chair. I also join other members to appreciate the good work. This one, it has been ongoing. I've been lucky to attend several sessions, so I don't have like a very new question other than following up. I liked what the colleague from the University of Nairobi said. The ship has left the harbor, and the chair you nodded. I don't know what was the meaning there, because we know once a ship has left, you can't again board, you will not. But to me, what I understood was actually, and again, you advised us that we need to keep noting down. So for me, the noting down is, as we progress with the approval processes, etc., let us keep documenting the outcomes that are actually applicable to the expected outcomes or what HAQAA is expected to serve. Because already we may be ticking some boxes now. So that's when we go to present, already we will show actually already we are here. I will give an example, like when the ESC was declared by the heads of states as a common higher education area, it's because the IUCA had already put down in place ABCD. So it was like, by the way, you tick. We are fit to be a common higher education area. So I think also that's the meaning I attached to that. The ship has, so we are somewhere there. And then in relation to that, the different phases, I was wondering again, and again, Chair, you also shared with us how some universities are waiting for this. I was again wondering why, what if we get feedback that no, let us have all the different phases possible, but we know that what is common or what is the key, the core is phase one. Others be elective. Maybe an institution may want to go for a phase that for us we have put ahead. If they are able, maybe that slide could be shown again later. So the different phases, I want to think that maybe we can actually have all of them, but again, we have like, this is applicable, all say the capacity building, that one is sure. But others, if say, I want to say, no, for me, I am ready, can I go through this phase? So, so that was my own contribution, of course, in terms of noting down as this process is ongoing. Thank you.
I yield to my co-chair, Anna Maria, to respond to this next batch of 3 interventions.
Thank you. Thank you, Douglas, for the European experience. It is good for us to hear from other processes and to know the challenges, to know the good practices for us to improve what we are doing now. Because if we don't learn from others, we will fail where other fails before. So it is very, very, very important. And thank you for your experience. About the credit or other elements of quality assurance, if we look to the framework, to the PAQUA, the Pan-African Quality Assurance Framework, we will see there that ACTS is part African Continental Credit Transfer System. It is part. And the proposal was addressed by the Tuning Africa initiative. And now that proposal is on the table, and tomorrow we will have a presentation on that. And we will know the work done by the Tuning Africa and the work done since last year, bringing back the previous discussion and looking for the way forward to take into account under HAQAA2, the African credit system. And this agency, the HAQAA, is really to bring together all those initiatives and ensure continuity. Because what we are doing now, it is all under projects. If the project ends today, all what we are doing will disappear. You know how projects are. We know about previous project experience which ended, and knowledge, people who were doing, even infrastructure were lost for that mission. So HAQAA, it comes to bring all those initiatives on the harmonization of higher education, quality assurance, ACTF, and other initiatives together. If you see the phase 4, it intends to bring together all this with specific committees doing different things, but under the same umbrella. This is the idea for the long term. As I said, it could be impossible to implement phase 4 today, but initiatives, for example, under HAQAA, they could be useful for the first phase we call facilitator promotion, because it's what we are doing. That is what we are doing now. It is related to other question about where we are. We are on everything which is done under HAQAA, and the document take all this information into account. We didn't bring all this information to the presentation because it should be longer than we did now. How long the process will take? This question was addressed since the beginning. I do remember the first person addressed this question was Jeffrey Mukora when we had the meeting with the team on African continental qualification framework. But what we said was that let us address the features of the 4 phases. Let us take the decision on where to start with. And from the starting point, we can say, as we are here, as we can do this, how long we can take for the next stage. It should be very difficult today to say the phase 1 will take 1 year or 2 years. And you can maybe create difficulties because we somehow the working group on this process could want to go on behind the time and not behind the processes. We didn't propose any timeline for each stage. And we know that a political decision must be made before starting the establishment of the agency. Even if we start from phase 1, I said main activities related to phase 1 are ongoing. We don't know when the approval will be made. That is why we don't feel confident to talk about a timeline. What we do is to recommend that we go faster. All meetings we had, they said, yes, it is urgent to establish this agency. I think I covered it. Yes, thank you.
About the ship has left the harbor. What I mean when I nodded my head is that the HAQAA idea is not negotiable. That's what I mean. The HAQAA has left the harbor. The heads of state and government had blessed it. So you go ahead, give us a mechanism of how it can work So that's why we're here. And the good news for me, and I don't know whether it's good news for you, I think it is that the African Union Commission is anxious that this thing should take off. They have been on Obrel Global, and I was say, look, where is this thing? They want it like now. So we're very hopeful that the thing will come out of the pipe. You know, in Nigeria, when you tell somebody, "Oh, this thing is in the pipeline," and the next time I say it's in the pipeline, they say, "No, let's break the pipe so that the thing will come out." So the thing will soon come out of the pipe. Do we have some more? Because I want to now move in another direction about the governance, and I'd like your thoughts on the governance proposal. Can we have the governance structure as we have it, the last version of it, shown on the screen? We're provisioned 90 minutes, and we have done about 60 minutes. So nothing says that we must spend the 30 minutes, but as much as possible, we just want you to give us some feedback on, like we're getting from you, governance. Okay, while that is coming on screen, is there any other person who will want some clarification or give us some very useful suggestion on any of the areas that we mentioned, that Anna presented? Oh, yes. I'd like to ask Professor Goski Alabi, who is the president of the African Council for Distance Education, to take the floor. I'm sure you'll be asking us about ODL activities within this whole thing, but maybe not. Professor Goski Alabi.
Thank you very much, my own prof, distinguished. First of all, I'd like to add my voice to congratulating the team for a very good job done, because I know this has been in the pipeline, as you said, for a very long time. My issue here has to do with sustainability. Mm-hmm. And as we consider the governance issue, I think that sustainability is one of the key things that we want to pay attention to, as to where the funding comes from for the establishment, as to where the secretariat is going to be hosted, and whether the governments of those or the place where the secretariat would be hosted would be willing to put in some amount, or whether the secretariat is going to be hosted at the AUC. These are issues we need to consider, because I recall very well that with the Tune in Africa, once the process was done, the issue of sustainability became critical. And the sustainability of the tuning process somehow has not been quite clear. But clearly, the institutions that were supposed to adopt it could not do that effectively, because the funding that was holding it up was no longer available. Thank you very much.
Showing the slide on governance, who is showing that slide? Who is Madam Pio, are you having some difficulty? We need that slide on governance. Who is kicking you out? We'll kick the person in. Yeah, let's have that. But meantime, we'd like co-chair Anna Maria to respond to the matter of sustainability, the secretariat, and funding generally.
Thank you. I understood that both secretariat, sustainability, location are all of those things related. And that is why we we addressed the elements for the financial model. Maria, she said in Portuguese that it is a need for more elements on what we will be beside or inside membership fees, fees for services, which services, and the donors funding, how to ensure that those things happens. I think that sustainability, Professor Koski is referred to, is related to this financial model. And sure, that is why we also addressed the financial model, and we said, apart all of those elements for sustainability, there is a need of budget for the establishment of the agency, because people will be there, means for working will be needed, infrastructure will be needed, and we believe that the African Union Commission, by the decision of the state members, will provide this means, because these agencies is to be set up by the African Union head of states. Thank you.
Thank you. So right there on the screen, you have a proposal on the governance. Very simple. And you have examples all over the place. So how simple is it? You have the General Assembly right on top of there, the organogram. And then you have either the executive board or board of trustees who are still looking at the better nomenclature. And then you have a secretariat. As simple as it is. And the secretariat, of course, will be headed by the Executive Secretary General and all of these that you have on the screen. I will invite one or two comments on this. Please note that these proposals have gone through several iterations. We'll be meeting, when you meet with a group, they will tell you, do this. And, we conducted studies, feasibility studies. We did a survey, stakeholders all over the region, and they give us ideas. Anywhere you turn, you keep getting at this, and all of that. But we are still open to having comments like we're asking for the on governance. Dr. Makoko, please.
Thank you very much. I had the possibility of it maybe being in the Association of African Universities, which would be a good thing because it's already established. But I want to add from what Prof. Goske said in terms of the support and funding. Let's look at how the association...
Sorry, ma'am. Let's go in this order. Let's come to this governance. Can the technology people put the governance thing up? I don't want to jump here and there. I'm focusing on this. I'll still come back to you, but I'm talking about governance. Please react to this one, and then let's put it to rest. The governance model. Who is? This one. Yes. So if you don't have any comment on this, can we have comments from any other? Not this one. The governance. Yes, this one. So we can put this to rest. Okay, thank you. You know what silence means? Silence means consent. Means you don't have any problem with this. So now let's take this one off, and then yes, Dr. Makuku, take the floor.
Much honestly, the governance is very clear. That's
very clear.
Very clear.
Thank you.
So in terms of what I was trying to explain is that when the Association of African Universities was formed, sure, the issue of sustainability, because it was also at a continental level, there was a bidding by the African nations. Ghana and Nigeria were among them until it came to Ghana. And then there are bidding conditions. For example, now we have the Secretariat which was part of the conditions which were put in there to say whatever country is prepared to host the Association of African Universities is supposed to take care of this, and that. Sure. So, but that is part of the sustainability that we are talking about. But besides that, I wanted to say we need to add more there, because when you look at the AAU, you have talked also about the diplomatic status, but can we widen the scope and look at other issues? For example, they were to offer office space for the AAU. That's why in the end we had that construction. What else can the House also try to come up with so that once the bidding is taking place, if it is that the way is going to be taken, then automatically it's a whole basket of what the country which is proposing or which is putting itself forward to host will take care of. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much. Any other? Yeah, I can see nobody else. At this stage, I'd like to thank you all for the feedback we have received on the stage of development of the plan by the Technical Working Group on the establishment of the Pan-African Quality Assurance and Accreditation Agency. As my co-chair Anna said, and that's addressing Prof's concern. See, if you look at the analogy that I gave earlier, it's like the harmonization is like a tree, and you have several branches. The African Credit Transfer System that you mentioned is also one of the major branches, and it's much on, and it's one of the items for discussion for the update tomorrow. Yeah. What else, Anna, other than to thank you so very much, and to thank you all. It's been nice, a long day, but a very nice day. We wish you happy to have some announcement about dinner where we're going to harmonize another harmonization in our stomach again. Please make your announcement, and then I will close the session. Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, let me discharge Anna. Anna, you have done very well. You have any comments or observation from our virtual participants? None, as I can see. Okay, Anna, well, thank you. You are a great leader. You are a great quality assurance. She used to be the president of the quality assurance No, you used to be the president of African Quality Assurance Network, AFRIQUAN. And then we have Maria Luisa there. Maria Luisa, that's our new president of AFRIQUAN. She hosted us very well in Maputo. And she is a team of our colleagues from Mozambique over there. Yeah, that's the Mozambique table where AFRIQUAN president is seated. All right. So thank you, Anna, and best wishes to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Okebukolo and your team for the wonderful job you are doing here. So we've come to the end of our second day of the conference. It has been a long day, so I would like to thank all of you for your active participation, but also for your patience. Kindly, a round of applause to all of you. Tomorrow, as it is indicated in the program, will start at 9:30. And don't forget, now we have tea that is outside waiting for you. And before that, I would like to call forward a PO to come and give you some housekeeping announcement. Thank you.